thereof. How many here have never flown a sailplane? Okay, we got a couple new pilots. This is my friend Jack Iafret. I've known him since I was a little guy. And, he's going to give the talk, and we got a real nice presentation for us. So we keep here in terms of the store. Most of our gliders right above Jack's head. Later, if you want to look at any of them, feel free to pull them down or set it here on the counter. That's about it. Jack, thanks. Take it away.
I'm giving this presentation for Barney Bauer. Barney actually made this. Barney and I go back a long way, and I've gone through this a couple times, and he did a pretty good job. And I watched a presentation by Joe Wirtz here actually yesterday, almost an hour worth of YouTube videos, and it's almost identical. The content's almost identical. It's just Joe, being the engineer that Joe is, he explains things, you know, I'll say a little higher level than this presentation. So anyhow, what this presentation is really going to center on is not sailplanes as much as climate and thermals. Because once you learn how to fly, you can fly a sailplane, that's not hard. But keeping the sailplane up is hard because there's no engine on it other than the sun.
Nothing going on yet there, Jack.
Oh yeah?
We gotta do this trick. Maybe have some sleep over.
I wasn't looking up there. There you go.
Thank you.
Alright. And you're going to see a lot of references to birds in here because Barney's wife's a birder. And we do buzzards at our field right here. These are both buzzards. They're not hawks. And being an old-time sailplane guy, I can tell you one thing. You never trust a buzzard. You just don't. I mean, you'll go fly over with a buzzard, you think they're going up, you come down and they go up. I don't understand it. Hawks? Yeah, you go fly with a hawk, it works every time. Alright, this class is going to be on thermals. How do you see a thermal? I've never really seen one, but a lot of times I can find them. And how do you fly in them once you found them? So that's what we're going to talk about. This is kind of the graphic picture that everybody thinks of a thermal. I'm going to sit down here so I can use the pointer. You can see this column of air going up, forming this big mushroom cloud on top like a little nuclear bomb. This is kind of the normal people think, well, air comes in here, funnels up here, and then tops out at the adiabatic layer, which is in here. Adiabatic layer is just, all that means is the temperature equalizes. The temperature in this thermal is warmer than the temperature around it, the air around it, so it goes up. As soon as it cools, the thermal cools down enough that the temperature is all common, this is what you get. Just the air just kind of floats out. Alright, so this is a schematic of what I just told you. Normally at the ground level, the sun is heating up the ground, and locally somewhere the ground will get hot enough and the air starts bubbling and forms this column of air that's going up. Oh, by the way, sometimes it's spinning as it goes. There's always a debate, does it spin this way or does it spin that way? It doesn't make any difference, it's spinning. And it goes both ways, by the way. And once you get up on top to the adiabatic layer, everything quiets down. Alright, the misconceptions. Thermals actually look like the one I just showed you. That's not true. They really don't. You may find one once in a while that does. I don't know, because you can never see them, you can just kind of feel them. You know, I talked about the rotation, clockwise, counterclockwise. That happens in real large storms, like where you get tornadoes, stuff like that, but not in a local thermal that's small. Go either way. Alright, so the idealized thermal is the ground down here gets heated up, makes a little puddle of hot air that goes up. Of course, your main objective is if you're flying along and you want to be riding this thermal doing a turn so that you can start down here and go up. Okay? Give you an idea, a 4-meter sailplane, we can fly those to 1,500 feet quite comfortably. Anything more than that, I start getting sort of nervous. But guys will fly to 2,500 feet and maybe a little better eyesight than I have. Hand launch glider guys are generally flying down here at the low end. They mostly never get much over 150 meters, I'd say. About that.
Sometimes.
Yeah, most of the time not that high. So as we heat the ground, to develop this thermal, that obviously we want to go flying, and we'll get to the flying part later. This thermal gets built up into a bubble. It's kind of like the bubble on the bottom of the frying, or the pot of water that's boiling. You start to see the bubble form, and then it'll break and go up. A little bit like that. Now you notice Barney has drawn in here another thermal that has gone downwind. These bubbles, a lot of times, as they get up and they grow up and they start forming bigger and bigger bubbles, it'll break off. They always will kind of go with the wind. This is infrared heat down here, heating the surface of the earth. Black surfaces, roads, whatever, heat up faster and hold air longer. The worst place you can go is over crops. You don't want to fly over corn or beans, especially in the morning, because as the sun's coming down, those crops are taking every bit of energy to grow. So they're not giving any of it back into the air. Okay? So go find yourself a nice flat piece of brown dirt. Or probably the best place, if you have a hill and the sun's beating down on the side of the hill, that hill will heat up and start sucking air up out of the bottom, and it'll start climbing the hill. So if you're flying and you launch, first place you want to go is to the side of that hill in the morning. Evening, it's backwards, because the hill's going to start calming down and the air's going to be coming down the hill, not going up the hill. Okay, so anyhow, we're going to heat the surface. We're going to start making a bubble. The bubble's going to get bigger, going to get bigger. It's going to go with the wind. It's going to lean, and it's going to distort. It's not going to be this nice little round tube that you think of. Okay, and it'll break off, go downwind. A lot of times it will hit tree lines, hills, something, and that'll cause it to break off and go up, or kind of roll over it. So Barney's representation here is we have a nice black strip of something, earth, and each one of these bubbles got formed right here. This is what a lot of people would think is of one thermal. It's really a whole bunch of little thermals. Now when you're flying in competition, if you get in one of these, you can just ride it up as it goes up, because it's going up and all the air is going with it. You go with it. If you come in between them, guess what? You go down, the thermal goes up. Alright, so there was a book a long time ago by the old buzzard, and we'll get into that later, that talked about this river of air, which is some big block of air that's moving downwind. And then inside this block of air, we have all these little thermals getting blown up. But all those thermals ride with that block of air as it's going downwind. Again, that's sometimes true, sometimes not. Depends on how much wind there is. But the one thing that is true, for every, you know, all this is air, right? It all weighs something. The thermals weigh a little less than the air around them. But according to the conservation of energy, everything that's in there has to equal. So whatever amount of air is going up, there's an equal amount of air coming down. The difference is that when you're flying a sailplane and you come into one of these going uppers, it's concentrated and you go up. There's a lot of area around that that's coming down, but it's not coming down near as fast as the air that's going up, because there's a lot more volume of air than the thermal has. So if you have the same amount of energy going up as coming down, you take the amount of energy coming down over a much bigger area, it's going slower. So you can be flying along, you're in a thermal, you come out of the thermal, and you say, oh yeah, I'm good. But you're still coming downhill. Alright, this actually is a computer simulation of really what thermals look like over a vast chunk of actually ocean. When I say it's a simulation, it's actually pretty real. It's a computerized data of temperature from satellites. They put it all together in this big block of space. I don't know how many miles square this is, but the thermals inside them, in the temperature, they were able to plot the temperature, and this is kind of what thermals look like for real. And what I don't know is what the wind conditions were or anything like that. I'm guessing it was pretty much not windy, because they're not all leaning over. So you can see yourself, if you're a sailplane flyer and you launch and you say, oh, I know there's air over there, and you go over there and there isn't air over there, pretty good reason. It's just not obvious. All right, we're going to go talk some more about the breakout of this thermal off of the ground. And Barney got this information from this newsletter, and it's just kind of a cartoony thing. The sun heats up the ground, you get a little thermal, the air is going over it, and again, same thing, the air is going over it. Now, you guys that have flown sailplanes, you're sitting here, the wind's coming this way, and all of a sudden you say to yourself, the wind quit. The wind didn't quit. What did it do? Okay.
Got blocked out.
Got blocked out. And it also, it doesn't show it here, but there's air actually coming in here to feed this. So the air where you're standing low to the ground can actually be going upwind. Now if you're a sailplane flyer and you get wind on your back, you go, oh yeah, because you're going to go upwind as fast as you can and find that thermal, because that's where it's at. The problem is you don't know if it's here or here or here. Okay, the higher it gets, the more that effect takes place. And then all of a sudden, the thermal takes off and goes, and you're standing there, and especially if this thermal happens to go behind you, drift behind you, all of a sudden this little breeze that you had that went to no breeze, all of a sudden it's a 15-mile-an-hour wind. Because this big thermal now is sucking all that air up with it. It's going right past your face. So that's kind of how thermals behave. Pre-flight guys have an advantage. They put up quite a few of these temperature, wind speed recorders around the field, and they can actually plot thermals pretty much. But free flight guys cheat, as far as I'm concerned, because they don't launch until there's a thermal. When we fly in a contest, we launch when the clock says it's time to launch. So now it's much harder because you have no idea if you're launching into a thermal or not. You have to go find one. So it's a just different hobby, different way of doing things. Of course, the free flight guys don't have the control to go find it. So they have to launch into it. And this is how they know where it's at. When we fly in competition, we don't have that advantage. Okay, this is the cycles. Someplace, wherever you're standing, thermals will go bouncing through. They may be over here, over here, over there, but if you take a slice in space, what will happen is the surface temperature gets hot enough that it heats up the ground, then the air temperature gets hot and forms a thermal. And it'll cool down, and these two almost come back together at the same temperature, and then the surface temperature heats up again, heats the air, poof, away it goes. Alright, so if you read books, you say, oh, we're going to go look for birds. We're going to look for buzzards or hawks or little birds feeding on insects. We're going to look for puppies flying out. All those things work. They really do work. Problem is they don't happen very often. So if you're in an 8-round contest, if you get one round where you find something like this, you're doing pretty good. So experienced pilots watch for all of this. They watch the tree lines, because if this tree is moving, that tree isn't. There's a reason. There's something feeding out over here, and you can actually, some of the guys are good enough, you can actually, depending which way the leaves are blowing, they'll know whether it's this side or that side of the trees. If you're flying in a wheat field, you can literally watch it go across. I've done that a couple of times. There's not a lot to see out there. And so what Barney's trying to drive us to here is, if you're going to fly sailplanes, especially in competition, what's the best dictator or indicator of a thermal? It isn't all this stuff that everybody tells you. It's the sailplane. You concentrate on the sailplane and what it's doing. How is it flying? Alright, you guys all know what airplanes do. We got pitch, yaw, and roll, right? The difference is, if you're flying a power plane, you've got your own thermal up front, and you're pulling this airplane through the air at a pretty good clip. All these control surfaces react the way you think they're going to react. That's not true on sailplanes. You can actually be giving a sailplane, let's say left, and it'll actually be going right. And I'll get into why that'll happen, okay? It's because we fly probably a lot lighter wing loading, we fly slower. You watch butterflies fly, I mean, they're flapping along, they got their own little motor, right? But where are they going? They're going with the wind, they're not going against it. Wherever it takes them, where they go. Alright, here's the big deal. You're in a thermal, and I just kind of brought you into this. You're flying along real nice, and here's this big thermal going up, and you're trying to turn left into this thermal. All of a sudden, your airplane's going right. Why is that? Well, if you take a plane like this, which doesn't even have ailerons, and oops, oh, here we go, sorry. And you're flying along, and Tom's my thermal over here, and I'm trying to come into the the thermal pushes the wing out. And now all of a sudden, I'm turning right, not left. Okay? So what does that tell you? If you're a sailplane pilot, that's the greatest thing in the world. Because you know where the thermal is. It's over here, not over here. So you have to get back into it. So there's a couple ways of getting into it. There's some slides in there, but I think this works better. You can either be flying along, the plane gets upset, and a lot of times what will happen, it'll almost stall, depending on where the thermal is. Sometimes it'll hit the ass end of the plane and kick it up. Things like that happen. But the main thing is, you know where it's at. It's over here. So you do whatever you can to get over there. The plane now is all of a sudden it's getting slow, slow, slow. It's going to stall. The way you get back to the thermal is push a ton of down, counter the rudder, and fly into the thermal. And I mean, with this airplane, it's 3/4 down, 3/4 the other direction. It isn't a gentle thing. Once you get into the thermal, you release everything, the plane will stabilize, then you can just kind of set up a nice circle, either play with the elevator. Most of the time, if your plane is balanced right, you don't even have to touch up elevator. Sometimes you have to keep putting down in, because it'll literally stall it. It'll slow up enough that it'll stall. So you have to keep pushing down to keep the speed up in the turn. And that depends on CG to neutral point and how you set the plane up, which is 90% of being a good sailplane pilot, once you kind of learn how to fly the air a little bit, is CG to neutral point. If it's not perfect, and on this airplane, perfect to me is probably plus or minus a 1/16 of an inch. Okay? And I'm telling you, a 1/16 of an inch on this airplane will determine whether it's going to fly good or bad. Now, will it fly? It'll fly great. If you're not a sailplane guy and it's nose heavy, you'll zoom around and think you're just doing great. But you're never going to go up.
How do you set the CG on your gliders?
Different than most people. I put in about 30 flights. I keep adjusting it till it works good. I'll start in 1/8 increments, up and back, and then fine tune it. The guys tell you to do a dive test. I just started, oh, I hate that. Because a dive test works at one speed. Whatever that thing's doing, it works at that speed. I want something that works at all speeds. Does it make the plane hard? What that ends up being is a CG and a neutral point is probably pretty damn close. And what that means is it's a lot harder to fly well, because it's very sensitive in pitch. I'll start off on a plane with, let's say, 10 degrees of elevator throw, plus or minus. Maybe end up with 4 by the time I'm done tuning it. Just because you just don't need much elevator if you have it set up right.
What do you mean by
neutral? It's a theoretical point on the wing. It will make life a little easier for us. If you look at the airfoil, somewhere theoretically there's a point on this wing where all the lift can be said to be concentrated. That's not exactly true, but that's a good way of looking at it.
So the center of lift, basically.
Center of lift.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have the CG forward of the center of lift, depending on your tail movement and all that stuff, it's a very stable airplane. That's why they say, you know, nose heavy. You keep moving your CG forward with respect to this, it keeps the nose down. It's not going to stall. As soon as you start putting that neutral, or the CG behind that neutral point, you get a moment this way. So it's always trying to stall. The ass end's always trying to fall out on you. As soon as that back end goes down, you lose airspeed and you stall. So, you know, when you fly a power plane, you're always at like 25% of your mean chord. Neutral points generally in the 35%. So you've got like a 10% buffer that would make you nose heavy by 10%. When you're flying a sailplane, I may be flying this thing at 38% of the mean aerodynamic chord.
So you're trying to get your CD right on that neutral point.
Just a scotch in front of it. That's why I said 1/16 of an inch on a small plane like this. On a big plane, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. Okay, little guy like this, 1/16 of an inch is something. Because this is a small airplane, small chord. You know, if you got a chord this big, it's a little sloppier. Plus the fact, and the reason I said it's theoretical, as you change angle of attack, that neutral point will shift a little bit. So you got to be careful there, because if your CG doesn't have some room to play, as soon as you start getting some angle of attack, all of a sudden your neutral point is at or forward of the CG and it gets wild. So you want to keep it behind the CG in front of the neutral point enough that you can have some range of angle of attack without that center of gravity or neutral point shifting to the other side of the center of gravity. Neutral point moves, center of gravity doesn't. So, is that enough boredom?
So there's a difference between neutral point and CG. Is there like a
Two
way?
different things, yeah.
Is there a way to, you know, if you have the airfoil that from the, like a lot of these planes have airfoils that are, you know, designed by somebody. You can reference that. Like,
Yeah, most
like
planes have a recommended CG.
Yeah.
I tend to start on a sailplane. I wouldn't recommend this on a power plane at all. But on a sailplane, I tend to start with the CG center to rear of what the plans would tell you to have it. Sometimes I end up well behind where the plan says to have it, because it just depends on the guy that designed it and where he put the lines on a piece of paper. It isn't how it flies. And so again, to find thermals, you want a sensitive airplane, especially in pitch, so that you can feel it moving, and the thermals will push you around, and you don't let that happen. You fight them. If it's pushing you right, you hammer it left, and generally that works. Not always.
As a beginner, I kind of looked at guys like Jack to tell me where to put the CG.
Yeah, and I can't tell them, because I do it by experience in flying. There isn't a plane that I've ever had that I got right in the first 30 launches. And I'll move the battery 1/4 of an inch, an inch, half an inch, depending. I'll just shift the batteries around, or if it's a winch launch, you always have some ballast in the nose. So I'm either playing with the ballast in the nose or shifting batteries or doing whatever I can. But again, I try to start somewhere on the back side of the accepted range. So it doesn't take 100 flights, it only takes 20 or 30. And you really want to do that starting out when it's really calm, early in the morning, to set the CG. Another nice trick is, it's hard to do with these with a full flying stab, but if you have a rudder and elevator, no, this has got a rudder elevator. That airfoil wants to be very smooth on the elevator. It wants to be symmetrical, as close as you can get it. It will end up with just a touch of up. It has to. But if you're out in the morning and you can just literally hand launch the plane if you're really consistent in hand launching and no lift. You keep moving the CG back. When you first start, the elevator may have to be up. Keep the plane gliding nicely. So the more you move the CG back, the further down the elevator will come to being symmetrical. So that's a good start. And then you got to go out, and it may be too touchy to fly in real turbulent air. So you may have to change the CG a 1/16 of an inch. 1/4 of an ounce in the nose. We used to do that all the time with the winch launch. Now you just move the battery. All right. I don't know that I have to go through this because this is that whole pitch I just did is summed up in this slide. The plane's getting thrown this way. Really what you want to do is go that way. Here's the other part of it. Let's fly into a thermal straight into the middle of it. Okay, we're not on the side. We're going to smash right into the center of it. So you fly into it, what happens? Again, if your CG is where it's supposed to be, what's going to happen is your tail's going to go up and the plane's going to start diving. If you didn't know better, you'd say, oh my God, I'm in sync. You may be in a hellishly big thermal. Okay? Because the area on the tail, and again, your CG is close. If you have the plane very nose heavy, this isn't going to happen. It's just going to go plowing right through it. It's like you didn't even know it was there. But if the tail's coming up, it's a pretty good indicator that you're in a pretty big thermal. You crank some up, you rack it over, and see if it climbs. If it goes up on the first turn, you're good. If it doesn't, get the hell out of there. And again, when you come out the downside of the thermal, you go, oh, the nose is going up. I must be in lift. Wrong, you're in sync. Because the down air outside that thermal, when we told you there's up air and an equal amount of down air, that down air hits the tail, pushes the nose up, and you start, you just go literally helicopter down. So, if you're out searching for lift, you kind of feel what's going on around you. You look here, you look there, watch the trees, watch the birds, watch whatever you can watch. If you find something good, if you don't, launch and go fly straight. Just fly straight till you hit something. There isn't any sense in turning if you didn't find lift. So you just fly straight till you can't see the airplane. Then you have to turn because you can't see the airplane, but you will, again, if you're in sync, the nose is going to go up. As soon as you hit lift, the nose is going to go down. And that's when you counteract. You just, basically, flying thermals is doing the opposite of what your airplane is telling you to do. Tells you to go right, you go left. Tells you to go up, you go down.
You know, a lot of guys will immediately go downwind because that's the way, you know, the wind is blowing, and theoretically any lift that's coming through is going that way. I'm always kind of scared of that. I'm a lot scared of it, actually. And I tend to like kind of buck it upwind as best I can, and a lot of times, you know, you can actually kind of just windsurf out there, and then I kind of drift back and forth this way. What's your thoughts on the downwind versus upwind approach?
I always go upwind unless I know there's a thermal downwind. If I know there's a thermal downwind, because like in the first slides, all of a sudden you felt this big rush of air. The thermal's behind you, it's not in front of you. You already know it's back there. The question is, how far and can you get to it? if you're in a contest and there's 3 other guys in that thermal back there, you know damn well where it's at, you can even see it. So you just boogie back there as fast as you can. Let it down elevator, put it in reflex, and go. Reflexes on the bigger airplanes, we move the trailing edge up to make it like a symmetrical airfoil, so it has the least amount of drag, and then you can really go fast. Most of our airfoils are designed at a lift coefficient of something, and you want to keep it there unless you're doing something. Like, I want to get from here to there, I got to go faster. So you make it more symmetrical. In a thermal, I want to go slower, so you drop it a little bit. I'm talking 2 millimeters, so not a lot, just a little wee bit. Okay, this is a top view of everything we just talked about. If you're coming into the side of the thermal, the plane's going to want to go this way, you want to go that way. If you're coming into the middle of the thermal, as you come in, the tail's going to go up, you want to pull up because you're in lift. So this is just another view of everything we talked about. Here's another trick. If you're lucky enough to be coming into a thermal and you're on the side and it's really kicking you hard to the right and you want to go left, and I'm dead serious, sometimes you can't turn these. There's not enough rudder authority to do it. What you do is you hang a hard right and smack into the side of it. You just do a loop and come back into it. This works sometimes, maybe 50% of the time. 50% of the time you don't, it doesn't work. Because you may be clean on this side of the thermal, and when you come around, you're in behind it into sink. If you're on this side of it, you're into sink, because there's sink all around that thermal. So I don't do this unless it's really a boomer and just really rip my plane out, then I'll do that. Normally, this is kind of what you get. I would say this is a normal picture. You're flying along, and your plane starts going right, and oh, there's a thermal on the left. So you swing into the thermal, it'll start climbing. And all of a sudden, it drops out. And you go back around, yeah, it's climbing, and it drops out. So what you want to do, this is the center of your circle, you want to start flying so that you're centering that thermal. You go toward the high side. When your plane's climbing, and I tell beginners, when they get right here and the plane starts going, and Tom will probably verify this, you hear me on the field going, push, push, push. Give that sucker down. The plane's going up, right? I told you, what happens when a plane goes up? You give it down elevator. You say, oh, I'm in lift, I want to go up. So you give it up elevator. No, it doesn't work. You give it down elevator. Shove it into the thermal. Now you can give it a lot up elevator. You really don't have to give it a lot because the thermal's going to do the work. You have to keep your flying speed up. Rack it over on the side and fly. All right. If you come out of the thermal, get out of Tampa, baby. All right. What that means is, if you're coming home and you made your time, that's wonderful. If you have to go find another thermal, say this thing went downwind far enough you can't see the plane anymore. Okay, I got to come home. You don't really want to come straight home because you're going to be going through the sink that's behind this puppy. So the first thing you do is, if you're coming out, at least head off on a 45-degree angle, either direction. Don't come straight down, straight upwind. Crab upwind, but not straight upwind. Because you'll get out of the sink quicker. Then when you get out here somewhere, you can roll around and come back over the field. And again, this is, I don't know how you, I mean, you can say all this and it's, you can actually visualize it. Doing it is a lot of practice. This is the Joe Ward's slide that I put in last night after I watched his presentation. Basically, this is that inversion layer that he was talking about. As the temperature closer to the ground is highest, and then as you climb, the temperature of the thermal decreases. It'll get to the inversion layer and actually step up a little bit and then go. But your plane is going to be falling out right here. It's not going to climb. And it's just kind of like hits a wall. All right, Barney said these are some really good references. The Old Buzzard Soaring book by Dave Thornburg. I mean, it's been out of print for a long time, so you have to find one on the internet somewhere. Same as this. I have this book, and I learned an awful lot from this book. It's a little dated. It says new edition. No, it's 25, 30 years old. I've had that book for at least 30 years. And it's all basically true because it's all physics. Just the way he does things in here versus the way you do them today. You would just use code instead of doing all the manual stuff that he does. And this is a technical book. I mean, you really kind of want to have an engineering degree to go through that one. This book, not so much. You can just read it and understand it. That's it. Again, I guess that's a frigate. Didn't know that, but. All right. These are just, what's this? Oh, this is 2015 hand launch gliders. Let me just do a slideshow here.
Everybody know the Greater Detroit Soaring and Hiking Society?
That's us.
Yeah, our field is in Addison Oaks Park. Fly all kinds of sailplanes out there. It's a really nice field. Pretty big field.
Hand launch is a
Is that the field behind the beach or where?
yeah, you know where the
I know where the sailplane, CPAP planes fly.
okay.
It's kind of west of the
when you
the
go-
Fuel Lake there.
Okay.
When you go in, you'll
Yeah.
go past the mansion or the conference center.
Conference.
Yeah.
the
There's a
Fuel
parking lot
Estate.
there.
Yeah.
You go right through the parking lot, and there's a big fence that says you're not allowed in here. Wait, just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a sailplane in your car, you're allowed to go behind.
Yeah. And you just follow that path by the water tower, and that's where our field is.
Yeah, head for the water tower.
Do you field sailplane only?
Yes.
Are motorized sailplanes allowed?
Yeah, well, motorized being electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we fly anymore. Yeah.
How many people hand launch?
We have a pretty good hand launch contingent. Our last contest was last Sunday.
16 contests.
We had 16 guys in it.
For the year, we had about 23 unique pilots come out for our contest. We had 6 contests this year.
Yep. Hand launch is big in our club. ALES is big. Altitude limited electric soaring. Basically, it's winch launch soaring with a winch in the nose. And you use an altimeter switch that the CD tells you how high you're allowed to launch to. You set the switch at the beginning of the contest. You launch. You got 30 seconds to get there. So you launch up. The motor shuts off because the switch shut it off. And then you're a sailplane. It's just, and we set that limit to be about the same as you get with a winch launch.
And, if you want to try, you know, DLG, you know, a lot of guys, you know, like Jack, I throw for Jack during contests. If you don't feel like you can throw in contests, you know, but
Just call Tom.
but,
His one arm's a lot bigger than the other.
you know, even Barney, he throws for himself a lot of contests. You know, up until recently, he had some injury, so he had a thrower come out and help. But,
Really, really good guys. 235 feet
Holy
On
cow.
a throw?
on a throw. Yeah, I don't know what Tom's good for, but he's pretty damn good. I usually come in fairly well because he's throwing. Not because I'm that good, but he's throwing. And this is a young man's game, and with hand launch, it's like any other thermal duration sailplane. The higher you are at launch, the better chance you have of finding air, because you have more time to search.
and we developed the new tails contest format that, like, this plane in particular, you use for tails. You want anybody know about that?
Tails is, and we're just developing the rules. They're out on our website, Greater Detroit Touring and Hiking Society.com, GDSHS, actually it's .org. But at any rate, what we did, because guys, old guys like me, there's a lot of us, can't fly hand launch and be competitive. We just can't do it. So we get guys like Tom and Mike Wiz and whoever's young and virile to throw for us. And it's a pain in the butt for them. You have an 8-round contest, I don't know how many times you're launching, but it's a lot. And you multiply that by 2, you're out there in a hot sun, 90-degree day, you're pretty beat. So it's not fair to them,
Yeah,
etc.
I don't mind.
But at any rate, Mike Wiz came up with the idea, why don't we smash these together, ALES and DLG. I said, all right, I'll make an attempt, and wrote up a set of rules. And we flew it all last year. We flew 4 contests last year, tweaked the rules a little bit each contest, and learned. And we published it on RC groups. And I really think it's going to explode. I really do. Because
Yeah.
a normal thermal duration contest like ALES, if you do it as long as we have, it's kind of boring. You launch to 200 meters, you fly for 10 minutes, and it's almost always a landing contest. I mean, because everybody's getting their flight times or enough that you're coming in and all you're doing is trying to spike the ground in that little circle. So, DLG, you don't do that. So what this set of rules is, we don't have any landing points. Okay? So it's all flying, and you have to do more than 1 task per round. So instead of going out there and flying for 10 minutes and landing, we lowered the launch height to 100 meters. And if you're really gutsy, we'll give you extra bonus points if you only launch to 60. Okay, so putting a little strategy here. Okay, now you go out and you fly maybe a 2, 4, and 6 minute flight in a 10-minute window. Well, actually, it's a 13-minute window. It's 2, 4, and 6 is what? 12. And then you get an extra 30 seconds per launch, so you can get your plane and launch it again. Because unlike hand launch, where you can grab the plane in the air, spin, and throw it, it takes a half a second. We force you to land the airplane, go get it, and throw it. So we're giving you 30 seconds to do that. So you've got to land close enough to go get it and bring it back to your launch point. And you have to launch out of your own box. So all the rules are out there if you're interested. And it is an absolute fun. It's a riot event. I love it.
Yeah, and then the 2 meter is the wingspan limit, and so we kind of set it up around the radian. You know, just anybody can take a E-Flight Radian and fly
It's
the
pretty
contest.
affordable. You don't need $1,000 airplane
Yeah.
to be competitive.
So I know the Radian is very popular. Is that one you would recommend for a beginner?
Absolutely. That's actually a very good flying airplane. I hate it because it's foam and, you know, it's just, I'm
Yeah.
going, you know, a piece of chunk of foam, a beard cooler is not going to fly that well, but it does. This is an Electron, and I'm not going to cut into John here, but I sell these for Kennedy. Kennedy flies or sells high-end sailplanes. This design's been around. I sold my last one. This is my second one. I sold my last one like 5 years ago, so that's how long the design's been around. But these are listed right now at $490, I think, and I'm selling for $300. We got a great big box of them. We want to get rid of them. So that, another $100 worth of stuff on the inside, and it's a marvelous airplane and extremely competitive for the TELS event.
That's, you should know that it's an ARF. I mean, you don't have to cover it or anything. You have to put your electronics in it, and
You gotta glue the tail boom on. You gotta glue the support for the stab. Glue the rudder on. And it just slides on. You hit it with some CA. Put your motor in it. Speed controller, altitude limiter, all in here. I have 2 servos back here, the rudder and elevator, and then the 2 servos for the flaps are in the wing. By the way, this is the CG range on the plan. Give you an idea, I'm probably flying a little behind the back one. The only thing that in any of these planes that are what I call stick airplanes, at our field, you poke holes in them a lot. So I got some tape on this one from 2 years of flying it, but that's okay. Doesn't look too bad yet. And as far as ease of flying, probably the easiest flying airplane that I've ever flown. It's just a pussycat, and it really flies well. So.
The tail get torn up?
Pardon?
What's the name
Tail
of it?
get torn up much on landing?
No. Well, it's 2 years old.
Jack's a good flyer too.
I'm sure I could do that.
A good pilot.
Yeah, I fly all of Kennedy's stuff because I'm a dealer, right? But the Avas all have this kind of tail on it, and some of those other airplanes. My Snipe, the hand launch, if you see the hand launches in there, they all have the tails below the fuselage. It works. Because usually you're coming in like this, and it slows down enough by the time the tail gets down, it doesn't do anything.
What you really don't want to do is crank it around just as you're coming in. Because
Yeah.
I broke my tail a couple times that way.
Yeah.
On a DLG. I
Sailplanes
kinda learned
don't roll. They don't roll on the ground very well.
The last little bit, whatever's going to happen, just
And
fly
with,
straight.
and with DLG, you can hand catch them. You know, if you bring them in just right. Unless you're like trying to eke out that last couple seconds, then you want to float it to the ground.
Yeah, to watch the really good DLG guys, it's just amazing. They'll be coming in, and you got the peg on the wingtip that you're throwing it. Thing will be coming by, and they grab the peg, spin, and throw it. I mean, the plane doesn't even slow down. It just drives you nuts. Old guys don't do that. That's why we wrote the